Let's say you think you're being honest and you're just wanting to have a sincere, open conversation. Your intentions are to problem solve or to repair, but the conversation goes south and you don't really know why it went south. If that happens a lot, you end up feeling like there really isn't any way to have a successful conversation, and it starts to feel pretty hopeless. In my experience, there are a few sneaky things that get in the way, some pitfalls of communication that will sabotage you and set you up to fail without you knowing. So today I want to share there are 7 communication saboteurs that I think are the most common pitfalls that will get in the way of your best attempts to communicate. That way you can remove these barriers and set your conversations up for success. Now, the first thing is that I see a lot of people ask questions. They think they're just being curious. They think it's a better alternative than being critical, but they're trying to understand something that rubbed them the wrong way or left them having some kind of feelings. So they're asking questions to try to understand, but the intention behind it is to challenge, right? So you're coming at them and saying, I just don't understand why you did that. Help me understand. If you're asking that question in such a way that there is no right way that they can answer, then it's not a sincere question. So for example, you say, I don't understand. Why didn't you call me to tell me that you were going to be late? And if they say, I lost my signal on the way back from up north, and that's why I couldn't call you. And then you say back to them, yeah, but you could have stopped at a gas station, or yeah, but what about that coffee shop at such and such? And you could have called then. So you are arguing, you're countering, and you're deconstructing their answer. So that's not you trying to understand, that's you challenging the answer, and there's something behind it. There's a point that you're trying to make. You did the wrong thing and you disappointed me, or whatever the message is behind that question. That creates defensiveness. And this is a very tricky one because there's some really obvious things that we do where everybody can acknowledge, well, yeah, that would make somebody feel defensive. But when you're really trying not to be critical, and I remember doing this, I would try to ask questions and not assume. Don't make assumptions of ill intention, just ask questions. But if you're coming at it and you're not aware that there is no answer that you could accept, then it isn't a sincere question. It's more of a statement in disguise. And so that's something I would recommend avoiding altogether. That requires a little self-awareness. Is there any way that I could get an answer for this question that would satisfy me? Or is it just a way to make the point that I want to make? And if that's what you're doing and you can be that honest with yourself, just, make a zero tolerance policy commitment for yourself on that. Also, I think if you're with a man in relationship, saying something like man up or step up or grow up, be a man, I'm not your mother, those kinds of things I would say are big triggers. These are something I would avoid like the plague for the reason that it can be very emasculating. It can be hurtful. It can be felt as very disrespectful, and it is an insult veiled as a request. And here's the thing is that you may be valid in your request. Like maybe you really want them to join you in more equal partnership. Maybe there's things you're inviting them to do that are fair and reasonable, and you're trying to highlight that they're not coming from their most mature functional adult place. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just better to say something along the lines of what you need and leading with your positive vision, instead of a request where there's an embedded insult in it, right? So something along the lines of, I'd like to feel like we're on equal footing, that we're true partners, that we can do this together. It will help if you can remember that you get to take ownership of the situation. You get to guide what you want to see happen. I want your input and I need your contributions. I rely on your contributions. So I feel supported when you do this XYZ, and you say what the behaviors are that you want. So when you say be a man or step up, you're describing a label, you're describing like an interpretation, a broad strokes descriptor. It's better if you can hone in on what are the specific behaviors that would constitute stepping up and speak those instead. And that would be a good alternative. So, hey, please notice when the garbage needs changing, or could you commit to doing the dishes at these times? Let's come up with a plan that we both feel good about, so I feel supported and it works for you too. That's much more of an inviting, less hurtful way of getting your point across. And it's going to set them up to feel better, but it's also going to set you up to get your needs met, because I think a lot of times we say things and we're shooting ourselves in the foot without realizing it, and that's one of them. The third thing is leading with analysis. So telling your partner what's going on for them, or analyzing what you think is going on their side of the street. The reason why this is a sneaky one is because a lot of times we're doing it from a place of care, good intentions. We've been reading books. We know them. We love them. We care about them. We know what they've been through. And so we can identify, oh, I think this is what's going on for you. And you might be right, but it's not going to really matter if you're not sharing what's coming up for you or what's at stake for you. You need to share what you feel, what you want, what you wonder might be happening, and phrase it as a question. I wonder if this is what's coming up. And ultimately let them decide, get curious and don't assume that you know, because even if you are right, they may not see it yet, or it may just land better if you are inquiring and being curious and they can come to that and own that observation themselves instead of being on the receiving end of that observation, particularly in a relationship where if you tend to be the overstepper or the over communicator or the one that's always kind of in their lane, this is going to be especially important, is to not lead with analysis and talk about what's going on for them. You also might be hiding by focusing on them and not even realizing it. Hiding in the sense of it's vulnerable to share what it's bringing up for you, or to lead with what is going on behind your curtain. Instead, you want to talk about, it's less vulnerable to talk about them than it is about yourself. So you want to think about what's at stake for me. Why do I want to share this analysis? Do I want them to have self-awareness so that we can be closer? Do I want to prevent shutdowns? Do I want to repair or problem solve? Then you just want to lead with that. What's your goal? What's your ultimate intention? Share your fears, share your observations, your interpretation, while also communicating, I could be wrong, right? Like, this is what I think it could be, but ultimately, you don't have the answer about them. They get to have the answer about them. The fourth thing that I see a lot is talking about the pattern instead of the specific thing that's bothering you. If you're giving feedback about a pattern and globalizing as opposed to just picking one thing at a time. So that would sound like a pattern would be like, I notice that you do this a lot, right? You tend to do this. You've always done it this way. You never do X, or you always do Z. Or you have if you feel like one thing is connected to a bunch of other things, you come in with a list, a laundry list, especially if you're coming to a conversation and you feel like you have their attention, you feel like it's successful, you might be tempted to bring in the laundry list, but they just never work, right? Ultimately, it is criticism, and there never needs to be criticism. I don't even really like the idea of constructive criticism, because technically there is constructive feedback, but it can be done in a way that's not criticism. Criticism is globalizing, and it's speaking to their character, and you're pigeonholing them. That's criticism. It's better to pick one thing, what bothered you, speak to it as a standalone, because then what you can do is you can make a request for the future. And then that addresses the pattern, right? You're addressing the pattern, but you're doing it through one thing at a time. Instead of doing a macro, you're coming in with a micro and you're making it constructive. Every single complaint can be turned into a request for the future. It's easier for them to say yes to that than it is to say, yes, I'm always like this. Yes, I can unload the dishwasher going forward is a lot easier than saying, you're right, I never unload the dishwasher. It's just easier to digest. It feels more doable. And it leads to the next thing, actually, this concept is that you really have to know what you're looking for in the conversation. So the biggest pitfall is not knowing what you're looking for in the conversation, which is connected to this idea that you have to know what that is in order to make a request. If you're going to turn a complaint into a request, what is it, right? Sometimes you are looking for something you haven't been clear about. So let's say you say, like, a client of mine actually that I was talking about, or that I was talking to early this morning, she shared with her spouse, I feel disconnected. And what she was looking for was for him to get curious and then attempt to repair or work together to reconnect. Let's figure out how we can reconnect. But instead, he said something along the lines of why he thought they were disconnected. And he thought that it might be validating, right? He didn't know what she really wanted. But so then she felt like he's not even trying, right? He's just basically, I'm sharing that I feel disconnected, and he's not trying to fix that. He's just feeding that, and by saying why he thinks that is. And in his mind, he didn't realize it was going to land that way because he didn't know what she actually needed from that. Now, just for the purpose of fleshing this out a little bit further, somebody else who heard that statement, they might think, okay, that was just an observation that they're sharing with me and more insights are coming, so I'm just going to listen. Right? They're just listening. And then that person might feel like you're not doing anything with what I'm saying. It was a bid for connection that was totally left unmet, right? Or somebody else might think that if they say that they're feeling disconnected, well, maybe they just want space. It's an explanation. They're saying that as an explanation for why they're not being warm. And so I accept that explanation and I won't put any pressure on them. But really the reason she said it was because she was hoping to reconnect it, right? So it's a misunderstanding because the intention or the desire behind the communication isn't clear. clear. So it's really essential. And I've talked about this before in the context of other things, but I see this as one of the biggest pitfalls anytime somebody has a misunderstanding and it's like people are getting mad at each other and both people are trying their best. And it's like, you're just missing each other, right? It's really unintentional. So you have to be really clear with yourself. First, what are you looking for? What do you really want to get out of the conversation? You have to know that first. And that sounds easier than it is. And then you can be clear to them and give them the opportunity to be successful, right? Because then they can feel successful and competent. And then you also get your needs met. And you don't have to feed this narrative of like, I can't ever bring anything up because we always end up only fighting. So that, I think, of all the things I'm mentioning today is probably the hardest to do and to condition as a habit. Now, number 6 is pretty straightforward. When you say calm down or that's not that big of a deal to your spouse, that's a big no-no. That's a big hot button. Nobody likes to be told to calm down. Nobody. Even if they know they need to calm down. Being told when you're in distress, just calm down, does not feel good. And I know this one sounds really obvious, but sometimes it's not, because maybe you're just trying to help them soothe because you would want to be reminded to calm down. So you think that that's going to help them. But most of the time, it's just going to be perceived as judgment or minimizing or invalidating. Like, I don't want you to feel this way. I just want that to stop. Not, I want to be a support to you. So instead, I think if you're talking to your spouse and things are getting escalated, maybe they're just stressed about something that's not even related to you. Try to look past the delivery, listen to the message behind the delivery, content over style, and try to communicate that you're their ally. You know, you're on their side to help. What do you need? Maybe they're looking for reassurance. Maybe they're looking for problem solving. Maybe they're just looking for you to care. Maybe they're stressed out because they can't find their keys and all you have to do is say, did you leave them in the car? You know, you're just offering a helpful solution. You're not judging the fact that they're stressed or overreacting. You're just communicating that you're there to help if it is helpful, right? Maybe they don't need that. Maybe they do, but that's kind of where it depends on the situation. And if you're getting triggered by their intensity, you have to look at what's coming up for me. Why do I need to feel like I need to control their emotions? If it's being expressed in an abusive, blaming way, well, that I get. But if it's not, you know, then it's an opportunity for inquiry. Why is that triggering for me? Is there something in my childhood or my history or my past relationship or even in our relationship previously where I associate this emotion with something negative and I'm trying to protect myself from that? That would be something to look at. But if it is like blaming and they're taking it out on you and they're verbally abusive or blaming or critical, well, then you can set boundaries and you don't have to entertain that. I'm not saying look past the delivery if you're getting attacked. I'm just saying if you notice that you want to try to, you know, hush them up a little bit, you know, make it palatable for you, there might be an opportunity to do some self-reflection on that. But if they're just emotional and they're just having a hard time, you know, you really want to lead with empathy and show that you care and communicate that you're on their team. And then finally, the 7th thing that I see that comes up a lot that will ruin an attempt at a really healthy conversation, no matter even if you've prepared it and you're ready and you're in the right energy, is if you choose the wrong time. So if you allow your sense of urgency to force the conversation before you're in the right place, if you're not in the right energy because you're feeling urgent, you might be underestimating your level of reactivity. You might be a little bit more escalated than you think you are. And so in that case, you think you're fine, but you're like feeling really urgent about it. A lot of times that sense of urgency is a red flag, and that tells you that you aren't ready. Unless it's time sensitive. If it's not time sensitive, then you can usually wait. So read the cues, read the room. If they're not ready, they've had a long day, they're stressed out. Maybe you've had arguments over the last couple of days and they're just under-resourced. Give it a few days. Wait for there to be a little bit more breathing room. Wait till they're ready. And you can just ask, like, could we have this conversation now? And if they're not ready, then ask for a time and plan that conversation. That way they're prepared and that way you're prepared. And this just means practicing patience, right? Because sometimes we do just want to check it off our list. We want to be done with it. We don't want to hold space for it in our brain, especially if we're doing the work on our own communication and our own limiting beliefs. We're eager to try this stuff out and be successful. So it is an opportunity to practice patience, prepare for the conversation, find a time that works for both of you. And then if you want to get it out of your head, you can journal it or you can put it in writing so you can just set it aside and you're not holding it in your working memory or worried that you're going to forget what you want to say. That helps me a lot. So that's it, you guys. Those are the most common communication pitfalls that I see that creep in and sabotage attempts for healthy conversations. There are others too, obviously. If there's something coming up in your communication that you want my input on, or that you feel like, you know what, this is getting in the way, I think this is a pitfall, or there's something happening in your conversations that you feel like are making it go south, but you can't identify what it is, I'd love to hear about it. And maybe I can help you identify what that is. And you can just put that in the comments. And also, if you want help with this stuff, you can book a free call with my team at monikahoyt.com/talk. I'll put that in the link below. Or you can always book in directly with me if you're not already a client. And I'll put that link too. And that way we can do a deeper dive and figure out what's happening in your dynamics, what might be getting in the way, and then, assess the barriers and offer some targeted coaching depending on your situation.